Okay, so I want to tell you a personal story about myself. And I'm a slow talker, so you might want to speed it up to 1.5 times the speed. But anyways, this would have started in the 1970s. And the earliest memories I have of my mother was that whenever I would look for my mother, I would find her laying on the couch, and she would say, I've got smallpox. I've got smallpox. Penny, I can't get up. You have to get me some milk or some orange juice or some water, and whichever one it was, I would get that. I would go to the kitchen, and I was really little. I could barely get the refrigerator door open. I could barely pour from the pitcher into a cup for her. I was so little, but I would come and I would bring her what she wanted, and I was really happy to be caring for my mother. And yes, my earliest memories of my mother are not of her caring for me, but of me caring for her and her talking about smallpox. And she got smallpox a lot. She got it quite frequently, and she got it when I was older, and I would go to school. And at the times my mother had smallpox, I'd say to the other kids, well, my mother has smallpox again. She has smallpox again. And they would not believe me, especially the older that I got, the kids would not believe me. And they'd have a bunch of reasons why, and they were actually really good reasons. And you might be thinking of those reasons right now. You might be thinking, well, how old are you, and what country was this in? Well, America in the 1970s. And you might be trying to think, oh, like, wait a minute, wasn't smallpox eradicated from the world? And wasn't it so extremely rare in the 1970s that your mother would have been like famous and in the medical literature and having people come and study her? And, she couldn't have been getting it repeatedly, because you get smallpox once and then you're over it. And, also, wouldn't she have been of the generation where everyone got vaccinated for smallpox? And a lot of good points. And kids at school would bring up these points. And I would argue. I spent so many hours arguing in favor of my mother does have smallpox. Yeah, she gets it a lot. That's just what happens. And they would laugh at me. They would have all sorts of reasons. I would argue. I would defend my mother. And the older I got, the more sure the other kids were that my mother did not get smallpox repeatedly and had not even had it once. And I defended her. I defended her. It was when I was in college that I finally realized that my mother never had had smallpox. Yes, this is not a story about smallpox. This is a story about compulsive lying and Munchausen's, a disease in which, a mental delusion in which people say they have diseases, and sometimes they believe them, sometimes they're lying. It can be hard to tell. And it's a story about the relationship that I've had with my mother over decades, a relationship in which we have had a broken relationship, and then we've had it heal again, and then we've had it broken, and then we've had it heal again. And this has happened many, many times. There have been times when my mother has been completely cut off. I don't see her, I don't talk to her, and I'm angry with her, and she's angry with me. And there have been times when I've gotten back with my mother, and I've been so glad to get back with her. And then eventually it got broken again. So this is a story about how I always wanted to have a relationship with my mother like I saw so many other people have. And I did not have that relationship with my mother that I dreamed of. When I was little, I wanted to be cared for by her instead of caring for her. And but it was the other way around. And I wanted to have conversations with her where I could believe what she said to me. And you might be thinking to yourself, how did you take so long to figure out that your mother did not have smallpox and had never had smallpox, and that it should have been really obvious to you, even when you were 6 years old or so? It should have been really obvious to you because everyone with smallpox has the pock marks, and my mother never had the pock marks. So there were incredibly obvious things about these lies, and not just the smallpox lies. There were so many lies she told me. There were incredibly obvious things I should have been clued in on faster. And I did get clued in on them. Some of the things she lied about, I figured out that she was a compulsive liar and that she had Munchausen's. And I figured that out about some things early on. And I realized that she was lying to me. But for some reason, the smallpox, possibly because it relates to the earliest memories I had about her, for some reason, the smallpox, I was not willing to disbelieve my mother about that. I held on to that thing, which was one of the most ridiculous things. I held on to it for the longest time, and I was in college before I finally admitted to myself that my mother had never had smallpox. So before I tell you the rest of this story, I want to establish a few ground rules. If you've seen my other videos where I talk about these ground rules, you can go ahead and skip over this part. I'll give you some easy way to skip over it. But the ground rules are that Penny Bloomfield, the character shown on this channel, is a fictional character. So Penny Bloomfield is not me. I am the person behind Penny Bloomfield. And whatever I tell you when I'm in character as Penny Bloomfield, which is all the time that you interact with Penny Bloomfield, it's me in character as her, all the time. I've had very bad things happen on the internet before, so I am in character all the time. But anyways, when you interact with Penny Bloomfield, you are interacting with me through the Penny Bloomfield filter. Think of her as a filter. So what I am trying for on my channel and with the Penny Bloomfield fictional character is that I am 95% the same as her. She has some extra stuff. For example, I've got this lore about her where she's a botanic alchemist and she grows pennies in her garden, and a bunch of other stuff that I'll probably go into more in another video. And of course that stuff's not true. But the other stuff that might sound true, like about my family, my friends, my history, all of it will have some details altered, and I'm trying to aim for around 95%. So everything that I tell you is 100% true about Penny Bloomfield, but it's only 95% or so true about me. And every single name, date, and place will be altered. not a single one of those will be the same, unless I'm talking about, well-known famous people or something like that. If I'm talking about people just in my personal life, it'll just be like that. So anyways, those are the ground rules. And now that we're done with the ground rules, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the story. Okay, so to go back to my mother and her having smallpox, or rather not having smallpox, but lying about it, how much of that was an actual lie and how much of that was an actual delusion? And what about the other things that she told me? So extremely numerous lies or untrue things. So if a person has a delusion and they tell you the wrong information, it's a mistake. It's technically not a lie because they actually believe it. So some of the things she was telling me, I think, were delusions rather than lies because she actually believed them. But other things were definitely lies. And one of the reasons I know that is because I had experiences where she would have a certain set of stories and information that she would have for me. And she would tell everything to me in this particular way. And then I would overhear her talking to my brothers and sisters, and she had completely different information for them, and she would keep the two sets of information straight. So there were some things that she was like that about. I mean, she was wildly self-contradictory about other things, but there were some things that she actually had enough planning that she could tell me one thing and she could tell my sisters and brothers other things. And another thing about that is that I had a different relationship with my mother than my siblings did. And I'm just talking about my biological siblings, not the step siblings that came later on from both my mother's remarriage and my father's various remarriages. And there were more than 15 step siblings, so I'm not talking about those, just my biological siblings. So there were things that were definitely lies. And I did believe a lot of them when I was younger, and I went through various phases where I realized that how much she was lying, or at least, wrong and delusional, and I would be like, oh, and then I would stop believing everything she said. And I would just stop believing it. And some of it was true. And then I would go back to believing her about nearly everything again. And then I would have really bad experiences and I would go back to disbelieving her. And it created this separation between me and my siblings, where we kind of lived in slightly different worlds of reality, and we had a different relationship with my mother. And this was a little bit like the relationship that my mother had with her own mother, my grandma. And so Grandma Ellie, and that's a fake name, of course. So Grandma Ellie was really hard on my mother, and they had a really difficult relationship. And my Grandma Ellie, she treated my mother very differently than my mother's 7 brothers and 1 sister. So very, very different treatment there. And so it kind of it was much worse between the two of them than it was between me and my mother, but it was kind of an echo. My mother was doing the same stuff that her mother had done to her. And my mother, it wasn't just Munchausen's and compulsive lying that she went into. There was also a whole bunch of stuff about nowadays it's sort of been absorbed into QAnon beliefs, but back then it predated QAnon and it was called satanic panic. And a lot of people got into it, and my mother was real big into it. And there were points in time when she believed that nearly everyone was demon possessed. And there were all kinds of other things that she tried to get me to believe, and that were very damaging, and that made it extremely difficult to have relationships with other people. And another thing was her Munchausen's. It wasn't just her and smallpox. There were some other diseases that she claimed to have that she did not have. And I remember one of them, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. I was looking up all kinds of information, trying to figure out if this particular medical condition was even possible. And it really sounded like it wasn't possible. And at one point, I actually asked a doctor, I was like, is this particular thing something that actually can happen? And he told me, no, that never happens. That never happens to the human body. That is not possible. And and she also did Munchausen's by proxy. So my siblings, not that much, me, very much. And I think, so in some other videos, I've talked a little bit about the 3 churches of my childhood. So there were 2 churches that we went to a lot, very normal and mainstream Protestant denominations. And, like I might say that one is Lutheran and one is Methodist. Maybe they were those 2 things, maybe they were 2 other things, but, they were about that level of, normal and average. The third one, which we did not go to very much at all, and it was quite a long drive, I have given the nickname in my other videos, the Hillbilly Faith Healing Church. So this is something that it was weird enough that like a lot of people thought that my mother was getting her weird beliefs from that church. But the thing was that she was not. She was not getting her weird beliefs from that church. And she was just really, really, really deranged. And I tried to understand her. So many times I tried to understand her. And I tried to connect with her. And the stuff that came out is that my mother, she had really good excuses for being a compulsive liar and as delusional as she was. And I'm going to tell you about some of those excuses pretty soon. And you're probably going to think at first, well, aren't these excuses just more compulsive lying? Well, I did think some of them were at points, but I researched them a lot, and they're not compulsive lying. She has some of the best excuses for being as messed up as she is. I mean, I've known compulsive liars. I've known munchies, and none of them have had reasons as good as my mother has. But before I go into those reasons, and it's basically 3 reasons, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Munchausen's by proxy. So anyways, the Hillbilly Faith Healing Church, it was a little bit like Christian Science in that they wanted God to heal you, but they were not against taking you to the doctor. And definitely taking kids to the doctor was allowed. my parents were really reluctant to take us to the doctor unless they thought that we were about to die. So they really did not want to take us to the doctor. But they had this sort of contradictory policy. They were like, let's almost never take them to the doctor, but at the same time, let's sometimes take them to the doctor and say that they have things that they do not have. And my mother especially did this to me. So she would downplay health problems that I actually did have and lie about them to the doctor, and take me from doctor to doctor, because doctors would stop believing her, especially since she would like contradict herself in front of them. So she would take me from doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor, and she got so many things put on my medical records. I got diagnosed with a ton of things that I don't actually have. And I do have multiple health problems, including my brain damage. But all these other things that ended up getting put on my medical records because of her, I don't have, do not have them. And if the doctor would not believe her, she would just go to another doctor. And it was really awful. It was really awful. And I had this huge number of medications, prescription medications that I was on at the point when I ran away from home. And there were some reasons, really good reasons for me running away from home. And I went to live with cousins, first some cousins, then some other cousins, occasionally some grandparents, stuff like that. And I was moving around a lot. And but one of the first things I did after I ran away from home is I wanted to see a doctor without my mother. And the first doctor I saw, I showed her all my prescription medications, and I said, do I really need all of these? And she was so angry. She was so angry. She said, you do not need any of these except for this one. Oh, she was super angry. And I got off all of them except for that one. And then about a year later, another doctor said, actually, you don't need this one either. And I got taken off of that one. And my health improved a lot, especially when I got taken off of a whole bunch of them. And I figured out later, looking up the side effects of those medications, that most of my severe health problems during that time period were over-medication health problems. So my mother's delusions, her Munchausen's by proxy, caused me tremendous difficulties, and it wasn't warranted. It wasn't warranted, and it made me extremely angry at her. And it was one of the things that caused one of the breaks. There have been many breaks in our relationship, and it's been broken over and over again, and it's been healed over and over again. But I was going to tell you that she has some really good reasons for what she did and how messed up she was. So I'm just going to drink some water, and then I think I'll go into those reasons. Okay, so I'm back from the pause, and I'm ready to go into the reasons that my mother was like this, in my opinion. She never actually said that these were the reasons why she was like this, because she would never admit that she lied to me about anything. She always insisted it was the truth. So these were not her excuses. This is what I have figured out as probably being the reasons, and it's just my opinion. Okay, so the first reason of the three major reasons, this was something I talked about a little bit earlier in this video, which is that she had a very difficult relationship with her own mother, my Grandma Ellie, and of course that's a fake name. So very difficult relationship. And her Grandma Ellie was just, I mean, my Grandma Ellie, her mother Ellie, was just so hard on her. And they had a relationship between them that was probably 10 times as bad as the relationship between me and my mother. And it was just so awful. And I think that was one of the reasons why it was so. And you might think, well, that's not a very good excuse. A lot of people have parents that are really hard on them and they don't turn into compulsive liars who are this delusional and who are, so burdensome to their own daughter where they think she's demon possessed. They put her on all the medications with these Munchausen's lies. They embarrass her in front of her friends with lie after lie after lie that she defends, and all kinds of other stuff that I haven't even gone into. So much stuff. You might think that, and you'd be right, but it's not the only excuse. There's another excuse. So, my parents had an arranged marriage, and it was hard on my mother. She did not know that it was an arranged marriage until after she was married to my father, and so she didn't know that. And my father, though, he did know it was an arranged marriage. It was arranged for him, and it was forced for him. He was not given a choice. So it was an arranged marriage, and it was a forced marriage, but only on my father's part. My mother did not know anything about this. And but it ended up being difficult to her. Now, my parents, they were very deeply in love. I saw how in love they were. I think if things had been different, they could have even stayed together. But my mother was too broken. My father was too broken. And the two of them together, it just didn't work. I think if circumstances had been different, it could have worked, but it just did not. But they did love each other. They wanted to be together, and they were deeply in love. And I'm not necessarily against arranged marriage either. I think arranged marriage can be good, but it should never be forced. It should never be forced. And, you hear a lot of people talking about arranged, forced marriages and how bad they are and everything. And they always talk about it in relation to women. And I want to tell you that men can be forced into arranged marriages too. It happened to my father. And so you might think, well, if she didn't even know it was an arranged marriage until after she was married to him, and she was deeply in love with him, then why was this something that was so hard on her? Well, the reason it was so hard on her is because my father's parents, Grandma Lilly and Grandpa Jevzad, and those are fake names, of course. They are just a short time after my parents were married, they took my mother away. They took her away, and they hid her and my father on the farm where I spent my childhood, on that farm. And my mother was captive for a few years. And that was really hard on her. She wanted to be with my father, but she did not want to be captive. And it was just incredibly hard on her. And she could not even tell her own parents at first. And then when she did tell her parents and they finally knew where she disappeared to, she had to lie to them and tell them, well, I'm okay, but you can't come here. And she could not go to town, and she could not show herself to any of the neighbors, and it was really hard on her. And when I was very little, she finally emerged, and the neighbors were all shocked, and my father's best friend did not even know that he'd had a secret wife that he'd been hiding for years. And my father's best friend was really shocked. And of course, there was a lot of talk about this. All the neighbors knew about this. And that's one reason why I know that the captive marriage was not another, compulsive lie by my mother. It was not a lie. And that's one of the things I learned to do throughout my childhood, is I learned that if my mother had told me something that sounded like it couldn't be true or it was really bizarre, that I needed to ask people who would know. Like I had to think, who would have seen this? Who would know about this? And then ask neighbors, ask relatives, ask whoever was there, did this really happen the way my mother said? And sometimes it didn't happen even slightly like that. It was totally made up. And sometimes it happened somewhat like that. And sometimes it was similar, but she just exaggerated it a bit. But yeah, she did like to take real events and exaggerate them or twist them. But a lot of stuff she told was just completely made up. So I learned how to do a lot of research. I was always trying to figure out, and I would confront her. I would confront her with her lies sometimes. I would get really angry with her, and I'd say, I can prove that what you said is wrong. I wouldn't necessarily use the word lie because that would make her really angry. But I could say, oh, you're misinformed, or you didn't quite remember it correctly, or something like that. And I'd say, look, I can show you that you're wrong, and because this person and this other person and this third person all have this witness testimony that they told to me, and you're not telling me the right information. If you actually believe it, then you're just mistaken, And she would never ever admit that she was wrong, or that she was lying, or that she was delusional, or any of the stuff. So that was the second reason. The captive part of her marriage was the second reason. And so I'm gonna drink a little bit more water, and then I'll tell you about the third reason. And the third reason is very extreme. And I might cry. I might cry during it. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to drink some water. Okay, so I'm ready to tell you the third reason why I think my mother ended up being so extremely messed up. And if, I don't know, you're doing a reaction or something like this is some not fun stuff. So you might lose some viewers if you continue beyond this point. You might want to stop right here. But anyways, and it's going to sound pretty extreme, and but this is something that I investigated very thoroughly, and there is a lot of information about it. And my mother, she was not even exaggerating this. She told this story to us over and over and over. I probably heard it hundreds of times during my childhood. And it was not an appropriate story to tell to a 5-year-old. It was not. Both of my parents did that, where they told extremely inappropriate stories to all of us when we were quite little. And she told this so many times, and I know it by heart. And before we get into exactly what it is, I need to tell you that that this is something that I will only be referring to as the big incident. I can't give you any details on it beyond how it affected my mother, because this is a historical incident. This is something that they've made documentaries and documentaries about. This is a big thing. And I have the 95% rule on my channel where everything that I tell you is 95% true about me and 100% true about Penny Bloomfield. Well, I couldn't get even close to 95% without doxing my mother and thereby myself. I couldn't get even close to 50%. There's only so many incidents like this. I probably couldn't even get 10%. People would just go through every incident, even slightly like this, until they managed to dox my mother and therefore myself. So I've seen the documentaries. I've seen them. I know that my mother was telling the truth. And everyone knew. They knew she was there. The neighbors knew. The relatives knew. I talked to relatives about this. They knew she was there. And I saw in the various documentaries that everything she told us about this, it was not lying and it was not exaggerating, not even slightly. She was absolutely truthful about this. And there were points in my life when I doubted. I was like, well, I know that it happened because I've talked to other relatives and neighbors and stuff about it, but was it really quite as bad as she said? Like maybe she exaggerated it. But then when documentaries, I started seeing them, I saw a bunch of them, and it was exactly. So I'm just going to call it the big incident. And I'm not going to go into any details. And if anyone tries to ask any clarifying details, I'm not going to tell you anything. What I'm telling you in this video is it. That's all you're going to hear about this. So anyways, my mother, and this was before she married my father. My mother, that one day, when the big incident happened, every friend that she had, except for just a few, nearly every friend that she had, died in front of her. I'm sorry. It's really hard for me to... She's told this story to us so many times. She had a few friends who survived, a few. But she was there. And she saw them. Some of them died right in front of her. And some of them were carried away. And they died before she could see them again. And they were horribly injured. And when she would tell this to us kids, she would cry, and she'd tell us all the details of it. I know all the details of it by heart. I know it. And she'd tell us how her friends' faces looked as they died. She'd tell us that. And I really wish she had kept this secret from us at least until we were like, I don't know, 10 or older. She would tell us about this, and she would cry, and we would cry, and we would hug her. And it happened over and over and over in my childhood that I would hear this. And I know what her friends' faces looked like. I know what they looked like. I know what they looked like. And this just broke her. This broke her. It was the kind of thing like being in a war and receiving PTSD. It was that kind of thing. She experienced that, and I think that was of the three main reasons that made her who she is, with all of her Munchausens and all of her compulsive lying and all of her delusions. I think this was the main reason. I think this was the main reason. She loved her friends, and she had to see them. She had to see them die, all on the same day. All except for just a few that lived, and she had all this survivor's guilt. She had all this survivor's guilt. She's like, why wasn't I in those graves? Why didn't I go to the grave also? Why? She was very upset. It's an understatement to say she was very upset. It was just incredibly horrible. And this is one of the reasons why I forgave my mother so many times, because I knew what she had been through. I knew that unlike other horrible compulsive liars that I sometimes ran into at various points in my life, I knew that unlike them, she had the big incident. She had the big incident. And I always felt so sorry for her. And I still feel sorry for her. And I also feel guilty about doubting her that it was exactly as bad as she described. There were points in my life when I thought, I bet she's exaggerating it. I bet it wasn't that extreme. I mean, I knew it was bad because I already had all these other information sources that weren't compulsive liars. And then when I started seeing the documentaries, I was like, oh, it really was that bad. It really was that bad. It was just so bad. And that's one of the reasons why I've reached out my hand to her so many times with all the broken relationship stuff that happened and all the very harmful lies that she continues to try to pile on me when I do have a healed relationship with her. When I do get back together with her, she'll start it up again. She'll try to get me convinced that nearly everyone is demon possessed or some other harmful thing that if I actually did believe it would cause huge problems for me. And one of the reasons why my relationship with her has been broken so many times is because she is a bad influence on me. And I am also a bad influence on her, because the relationship between me and her is sort of like the relationship between her and her mother. It's like her mother, my Grandma Ellie, did not do very many bad things to my mother's 7 brothers and 1 sister. Not very much. I mean, some, but not very much. But my mother, she was just so obsessed with putting so many burdens on my mother and so much horrible mistreatment. And but when my mother left the house of my grandmother, it was just a vast improvement, and she was able to have much better relationships with her other children. And my mother was kind of like that with me. My mother has a much better relationship with my siblings, my biological siblings, as well as, the step siblings that she is a stepmother to, a much better relationship with them. And when she married my stepfather, she improved a lot. She improved a lot. And, and I really, there were so many times when I wanted to stop, living with cousins and just go and live with my mother and stepfather, but I usually did not because she really did improve a lot before she married him and especially after she married him. But when I would show up, she would start her old patterns of behavior towards me. And I felt like I couldn't really be there or I would mess up her recovery and her marriage with my stepfather. I felt like, and he didn't know how bad she was. He didn't know how much of a compulsive liar. And she hid it from him, and she had much better behavior in front of him. And I didn't want him to find out because I was really scared that it would ruin their wonderful marriage. And I really respect and love my stepfather a lot. But I would avoid him quite a bit because I was afraid of being a bad influence on my mother and of letting out her secrets. I was afraid she would go back to the really, really heavy-duty compulsive lying, and that her really obvious mistreatment of me in particular would clue him in, and I was afraid of their marriage ending. And one of the things that I did with my stepfather is that I would send him, even though I avoided him as much as possible, I really loved and respected him, and I would send him these Christmas cards every year. No matter where I was living, I would send him a Christmas card, and the Christmas card would be full of this massive, massive amount of praise for him, and really, really vague praise, because I wanted him to know that I love him, that I love him and I respect him, and I think he's really good for my mother. But I couldn't tell him any of this stuff because I didn't want it to ruin their marriage. And I did that for many years. And eventually I stopped doing it because my mother started causing trouble over those Christmas cards. So I stopped doing it. So there's no Christmas cards for my stepfather anymore. And I'm sure he was really mystified by them. Like, why does Penny avoid me so much, but then she professes to love and respect me so much in these extremely weird Christmas cards? So I don't know if he ever actually figured that out, and I hope he never does. I hope he never does, because I want him and my mother to continue to be happy, even though I have a broken relationship with her right now and have not seen her or my stepfather in years, and do not send them letters or speak to them at all. And but I've been thinking about my mother. I've been thinking, do I want to reach out my hand to her again? I am so jealous of people who have good relationships with their mother. People like Sky Browse and his mother. When I saw how touching their relationship was, I was immensely jealous because I would like to have a relationship like that with my mother, but I know that it will never be possible. Even if I decide to reach out my hand to her again and heal our relationship like I have so many, many times before, even if I do that, I know that it won't be a good relationship. It will be extremely burdensome for me, and probably for her as well, and it'll probably break off again. And I haven't decided whether I'm going to ever hold out my hand to her again like that. I hate the yo-yo. I hate the yo-yo, the on again, off again, all of the bad things that happen when I do have a healed relationship with her. I hate those things that happen. And when I have a broken relationship with her, I think about her, and I want to reach my hand out to her. I really want to reach my hand out to her. And she has done a lot of incredible things for me. You might think to yourself, with all the things I've told you, that she's just harmful to me, but she's not. There were a number of points in my childhood and later when I wasn't sure if she actually loved me. I was unsure. But she's done a number of things that have proven to me that she does love me, and she has made tremendous sacrifices for me. When I ran away from home, she helped me to do it. She helped me to run away from home and move in with cousins and then keep hiding and running and hiding and running. She helped me. And there were a bunch of reasons why I ran away from home. And I'm not going to go in and explain them all. One of them was, and this is just one of the reasons, it wasn't even the main reason. One of them was that I was facing an arranged marriage myself, which I absolutely refused. I was like, I will not do this arranged marriage. I will not do it. And I didn't do it. I didn't do it. The man that I had an arranged marriage that was going to happen to, I did not even kiss him. I did not even date him. Nothing. So nothing happened between us like that. No kissing, no dating, nothing. And I refused to marry him. But I was under immense pressure to do so. And she helped me run away from home. And she faced a lot of risk in order to do that. And I'm extremely grateful that she helped me run away from home. I was young and stupid, and I could not have done it on my own. I would not have known how to do it. Another thing she did is when I was in college, and I dropped in and out of college a lot, and I went to college, first at this place, then at this other place, and so on and so forth. And I usually didn't have enough money to go, so I'd have to drop out and work for a while and then go back in and stuff. But there was one point at which she said, I'll do it. I'll pay for your college. I'll pay for your college. And I was very happy. But my mother, she made a tremendous sacrifice in order to pay for my college. And a tremendous sacrifice. And she didn't pay for it for very long because I found out about that sacrifice, and I stopped taking her money. After I found out about it, I was like, that's what you did? That's what you did? I can't take the money. I can't take the money anymore. No more paying for my college. And what she did is she was working in a factory at that point. And there was this vat of chemicals that it was illegal to have a worker working directly over that vat of chemicals. And the factory got in trouble over and over again for having workers work over this vat of chemicals. And my mother, she said, I'll do it. And it was very high pay if you took that position, extremely high pay. And with that extremely high pay, she was able to afford my college, and and she would do it. She would go there. She would take that position. She would be over the vat of chemicals. And you might say to yourself, well, it's how is that, that big of a sacrifice? Sure, it's illegal, but the law is often, kind of pedantic about, things like worker safety and stuff like that. So you might be thinking that to yourself. Well, the thing is about my mother, let me explain a little bit about that side of the family's history. So my mother, she looked like a teenager until she was nearly 40. I remember when I was a kid, she'd be going around, and she would get bizarre reactions from people all the time, because she had, like me, the oldest of the biological kids, a 10-year-old, let's say, and people would be looking, and they'd be saying, why does this 16-year-old girl have a 10-year-old daughter? Why? And my mother would be like, no, I'm 30. And people would not believe her. And she was extremely young looking and very beautiful. And it was something that ran in her family. Her grandma, my great-grandma, the only great-grandma that I ever met, and one that I loved very much, she was in her 80s and looked like she was 50, and a good 50 too, not a rough 50, but a real good 50. She was in her 80s, my great-grandma, looked like she was 50, and her hair didn't even start to go gray until her late 80s. Her hair, just a little tiny sprinkles of gray, started to show up in her late 80s. And so that was the thing that's in my family on that side, is there's not all of the people, just some of the people, but my mother was one of the people that had that genetics. So she looked like a teenager till she was nearly 40. And what happened was that that when she was working above this vat, it was extreme, and it was fast. She went from looking like a teenager or very early 20s to looking like she was 50 or even 60. She should not have been above this vat. So she sacrificed her beauty for me, for just a tiny amount of college for me. She sacrificed her beauty. And that's one of the really great things that she's done for me that I wish she hadn't done. But the fact that she did it, it proved her love to me. I was so upset that she had done it. I was so upset. And just for a tiny bit of my college, too. She did not pay for it for very long. It was expensive. She paid for a tiny bit. And she sacrificed her beauty. She sacrificed it for me. And because of that, I know that she loves me. And there's other things. I won't go into all of them. I've just gone into the big things. But I know, because of things that she's done, not merely things she's said, but things she's done, I know that she loves me greatly. And that's one of the reasons why I have extended my hand to her and healed our relationship so many times, despite the bad stuff that inevitably happens afterwards. I have extended my hand so many times, and she is now at a point where within about a decade or so, she's going to reach life expectancy for an American woman. And I have been thinking about that. I've been thinking, Penny, you might only have 10 years or so. Are you going to extend your hand to her again? Are you going to extend your hand to her again? And I've been thinking about it, and I really want to do it. I want to do it. I want to extend my hand to my mother, but I'm not sure if I ever will. I'm not sure if I ever will in the entire rest of her life. And I don't know. I don't know if I ever will. So this story that I've told you, it doesn't have an ending. The ending is that I'm undecided. I don't know if I will extend my hand to her ever again. I kind of think that I will, because I've done it so many times before, but I've also been worn down. I've been worn down a lot, and I don't want to go through that yo-yo again and again and again. And the last time I saw her, she was in my stepfather's arms, and she was so happy. She was so happy. And I don't want any chance of messing that up. I don't want any chance of messing that up. So that's the end of the story. I am undecided. Thank you for listening to this very, very personal story about myself. Thank you.